Hello and welcome to History Through Fiction, the podcast. I'm your host, Colin Mustful, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Susanne Wilson, author of the novel The Death and Life of Iphigenia. Jenny, hi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. So I just want to jump right into it. Who is Iphigenia? I am not familiar with this person, with this part of Greek mythology, so just fill me in on who she is.
Yeah, Iphigenia is part of the Trojan War series of myths, and she's the daughter of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. So she's the princess of Mycenae, and King Agamemnon is kind of the guy who who spearheads the Trojan War. He kind of leads the troops off to war. And the myth goes something like this. He gathers all his troops at a bay or a beach, and the wind completely dies down. And so they can't sail to Troy. And so he consults a seer, and the seer says, well, Artemis, who's the goddess of hunting, among other things, you've angered Artemis, and she is demanding that you sacrifice your eldest daughter. And once you do that, then she will unleash the winds and allow you and all of your soldiers to sail to Troy and, begin their war. And so he decides to sacrifice his eldest daughter, Iphigenia. So he lures her to this area where they're at, this beach, and he lures her there under the pretense of a marriage. He says that she's going to marry Achilles, who I think everybody has heard of Achilles before. So she goes there thinking that she's going to be married, and instead she's going to be sacrificed. And so that's her story. There are different versions of her story with different endings. And so that's kind of where my book comes in, as a different version of that.
Well, that would be quite a stunning surprise. I did want to ask you about that because you said there are different versions of the story. How did you decide which version was right for your narrative?
It's pretty simple. I just didn't like the version where she died. So I studied Greece and Rome in college. And so I studied this myth in college, pretty in depth. And so I'm pretty familiar with it and with all of the different variations of it. And I always felt connected to Iphigenia. She's just a teenager. She's just she's a princess. She thinks she's going to go get married, and when in fact, her dad is going to try to murder her. So I didn't I didn't care for that story. I wanted to give her a lot more of a life, and more of a fulfilling life. And so that's why I chose the alternate ending.
And what are the 14 years that you cover? How do you bookend those 14 years?
So she starts as a 14-year-old princess, and she ends as a 28-year-old priestess. And in those 14 years, the first thing that happens is her dad, tries to sacrifice her. And then she is taken away to a foreign land, where she's kind of plopped down into this place that she's never been before. She's never even heard of it before. She doesn't know a single person. And so it's that 14 years of her reclaiming, or I guess claiming a new life for herself, and kind of rediscovering her life. She can no longer fulfill that role of princess that she was raised for, and now she has to figure out what the rest of her life is going to be, I guess. And the traditional stories actually take longer than 14 years. They take more like 20 years. I trimmed it down a little bit because I thought 20 years seemed like a little too long to cover in one novel. So um, But yeah, that's what she's kind of doing during that period is she's making new friends and meeting new people and becoming important in her own right.
Can you talk a little bit more about the craft involved there? I'm curious because you had mentioned that you studied this in college, and how did you transfer that academic experience into telling a kind of a historical fiction narrative of her life?
Um, I mean, I lived and breathed this world for a long time, and also I've been writing. I've been writing since I was a kid, and so I guess writing and learning have just kind of always been really important to me, and using my academic background to translate that into a fictional work. Honestly, it just kind of felt pretty natural to me because I kind of live in both of those worlds anyway. And it's kind of nice because this time period in which my story takes place is the late Bronze Age Greece, and they didn't have they had writing, but it was administrative, so they didn't give us a lot of plays and stories, and we don't know a lot about their culture, so it left me a lot of wiggle room, I guess, to kind of invent some things. So it was kind of a nice mix of using historical, archaeological evidence, and then filling in the rest with my imagination. So it was kind of I really had a lot of fun with that.
I'm really curious to know more about your interest, your passion in this subject matter. Is there anything you can pinpoint as to, when you knew you were fascinated with this history, this mythology, and that you wanted to spend, much of your life researching and writing it?
So I didn't have a lot of this growing up, like, a lot of people do, especially in other countries. I wasn't necessarily exposed to Greek myth very early on. I started college as an English major, and I was going to be an English teacher. And I was about a year into that, and I knew that wasn't my right path. I knew that working with kids was not it was not going to work out for me. I was not built for that. And so I was kind of feeling a little bit lost, and I actually went to a basketball game. I went to the University of Iowa, and so I went to an Iowa basketball game, and it was senior night, and they were introducing all of the seniors from all of the sports for the university, and everybody kind of all these seniors went down onto the court, and they announced their names and their majors, and one of them was a wrestler, and his degree was ancient civilizations. And I can't really explain exactly what happened, but it was definitely like I had a moment and when I heard I had never heard of a degree called ancient civilizations before that basketball game. And I just knew, like in that moment, I knew that's what I wanted to switch to. I wanted to switch from English to ancient civilizations. I didn't know anything about the major at that moment, but I went to the administrative hall the next day. And I specifically remember doing this. It was Calvin Hall on campus. And I went to and I picked up a brochure because this was in the 90s and there was no internet. You couldn't look this stuff up online yet. So I picked up a brochure and I looked at the requirements for the degree, and I said, yeah, this is me. And so I switched my major, and that was it for me. And it was the right thing to do. I loved it. I loved every second of my, um, after switching from English to ancient civilizations, I loved every second of my education.
That's really great. I wonder if you can now talk about from that moment to where you are now. I'm really curious to know more about your experience learning to be an author because there's so much that goes involved that's involved in publishing a novel, and you've done such a wonderful job with a website and great cover design and great writing. What were some of the challenges along the way? What have you learned? Where are you at now as an independent author?
Well, thank you, first of all. I appreciate all of that. Well, like I said, I love to learn. So learning the craft of writing is just another thing that I really enjoy doing. It's a hobby. I've, well, so I don't know where to start here. I wrote a novel back in 2007. I started writing it, and it was a Robin Hood retelling. And it will never see the light of day, most likely, just for the record. But it was a really great practice. But I lived out in Colorado at the time, in Denver, and I joined the Rocky Mountain Writers group of, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I joined them and took online courses. And so that was kind of the beginning of me learning the craft of writing versus just diving in and writing the way that I thought it, you know, the writing what I felt versus, there's a mix of writing from your heart, and then there's a craft to it as well. So that was kind of, I would say 2007 was the beginning of me kind of learning the craft of that. And ever since then, I've been reading craft books like Stephen King's On Writing is kind of probably one of the most influential for me. And then once I moved back to Iowa, I started taking classes through the University of Iowa. So they have the Iowa Summer Writing Festival, which is not just during the summer. It's online year round now since COVID. COVID kind of opened up a lot of things like that. And so I've taken many courses through, I mean, they have the greatest instructors through the University of Iowa. So I've learned so much through those courses. I also have joined the off-campus writers workshop, which is based out of Chicago, which is also learning. Every week they have a new presenter that you can watch, who teaches you a little different piece of the craft. And so I've definitely taken a lot of advantage of that. And then I also have a group of critique partners that has been extremely valuable.
Well, that's awesome the way you're able to piece all that together. Can you go into a little bit of the business side of things? Because I find, at least this was my experience, I had to learn that there's a lot more to it than just the craft of writing. You have to learn how to get your book in front of audiences. Can you talk a little bit about your experience learning that aspect of things?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm indie published, which means that I'm doing it all by myself. And I never even queried any agent, or I decided pretty early on, once I realized that this was going to be the book that I finished and this was going to be the book that I published. I really started learning the industry of self-publishing. And again, I read books, I read blogs, I've signed up for newsletters, I listened to podcasts that are presented by people who are really established in the industry of self-publishing. And so I really felt like I had a pretty good grasp of it. Turns out I didn't, but I thought I did. And I I really had what I thought was a really solid plan going into it. I worked while I was writing my first draft of my novel. I started building my audience. I started building my Instagram page and my newsletter subscribers, and so by the time launch day came, I had some people to launch to.
I want to know about some of your travels. I saw your pictures on your website. So you've been to Greece, Rome, Turkey. Tell us about those experiences, maybe both as for pleasure and for research.
Yeah, I've been to Italy a couple times and m- various places in Greece, and then I've been to Turkey once. And I mean, you can't beat it. It's gorgeous over there. It's seeing these ruins in person and seeing just the vastness of the enormity of the buildings, and just trying to use your imagination and try to picture what those would have looked like when they were new is amazing. But yeah, I really love to travel, and so it's no problem for me, to um to hop on a plane and go over there. But seeing, when I studied all of this 30 years ago, you see all of this in books, and then eventually you can see it online and you can watch YouTube videos, but actually being there in person is just like a completely different experience.
I'd like to know about your imprint, Nine Muses Press. Is that was just your own creation? And what are the nine muses? I mean, I presume that's Greek mythology.
It is, yeah. So the nine muses were goddesses, that were they were the goddesses of all of the arts. So there was singing and acting, and science was considered an art back then. And so there were muses for tragedy and comedy and everything like that. And so actually, the muse of tragedy plays a big role in my novel, um, my first novel here. And I just, when I was trying to think of a name for my imprint, as a self-published author, you can use your own name or you can create an imprint, and either way works just fine. But I wanted to create the imprint. I wanted to have a logo. That's part of why I wanted to create an imprint. So I had a logo created for my imprint, and I had a lot of fun with that. And yeah, so I chose the muses because it makes sense. Well, A, because one of them plays a big role in my first novel, but also, I mean, they're the goddesses of art. So
I'm just thinking out loud here because this is what happened to me. Would you ever consider publishing other authors under your imprint, maybe with this ancient civilizations niche?
yeah, I actually have thought of that. Um, I run two other businesses, so running businesses is it's not scary for me at all. So I've actually thought about that. I'm not there yet just because I'm still trying to keep my head above water with my own stuff, but maybe someday.
And then I saw that did you won the Novel London Literary Prize, or you were nominated?
I was shortlisted.
Shortlisted.
Yeah, I
Okay.
made it to the top six. So yeah,
Tell me about that.
that was the first chapter contest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that prize. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
It was just the first chapter contest. I submitted my prologue and like a little bit of chapter one, and made it to number six. And
Nice.
they gave us a chance to read on Zoom. So there's like Zoom recordings of all of us out there. And
Okay. Well, it must have been great to get that recognition. Are, are,
it
are you
was.
submitting your final manuscript to any awards?
I'm looking into it. I haven't submitted anything yet.
Okay. And so what is next? I understand this is a series.
Yeah, I'm currently working on book two, which is the series is going to be basically standalone books. So it's they can be read in any order. So I don't know if there's a proper term for that or not, but they don't have to be read one, two, three, four, but they all take place in the same world. And I'm not quite ready to announce yet the exact topic of book two, but it's underway and I have it all plotted out and ready to go. So hopefully soon.
Awesome. Well, Jenny, congratulations on the death and life of Iphigenia. Thanks so much for coming on to talk to me. I'm definitely going to check that novel out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.